Hey there, unconventional conventionists. Thanks for tuning your dial to Time Warp Radio, the Rocky Horror Picture Show movie by minute podcast, where with each 7 minutes, bum, 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 we can make you a fair. I'm Haley Mervini.
And I'm Katie Tomini.
And we are your resident criminologists. On today's timestamps, we've got minute 41:55 to minute 48:04, and beep, beep, beep.
Meatloaf's ready!
Meatloaf's ready! We'll be continuing our conspiracy about the corpse of Charles Atlas. Mm-hmm. Because, Katie, are you a Muscle fan?
I wouldn't say that I'm so much of a Muscle fan.
Are you more into his blue eyes?
I wouldn't say that I'm a Rocky fan.
Ah. You're biased toward the man of the hour.
Ugh, we love Meatloaf.
Yeah, we're finding out what's been delivered for dinner in our profile of Meatloaf and his Elvis-inspired Eddie.
Yes.
It is a really fun section of the movie. I think this is probably, if people were not into the ballroom segment of musical numbers, they prefer the hot patootie big party scene.
I feel like this is when the party really gets started. I feel like this is, like, at least for me personally, this is where my little, like, rock and roll fantasy gets started.
Or it's where you get killed off in literally one character's instance. But we'll get to it. Because he has a very interesting... Eddie is, like, intermingled with all of these people in a strange 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon way.
Yeah, totally.
And let's just get into it.
All right. So we are in the laboratory. Mm-hmm. We hear 3 loud beeps and a large, bright red refrigeration unit door is slowly creaking open. It's falling like a drawbridge to reveal a wall of ice.
Mm-hmm. And originally in the first edition of the script, they were going to continue with what they'd done in the stage show, which was have Eddie being stored in like a Coca-Cola freezer. Mm-hmm. So they were going to have tons of Coca-Cola bottles all over the place, which I really like that because, like, let's say Eddie's been sitting in there and he's not been, like, totally Han Solo, like...
in carbonite,
right,
frozen.
Exactly. He still is able to, like, walk around the refrigeration unit. It would explain why he's able to, like, stay alive for that period of time.
He's got the Coca-Cola for substance.
His liver probably is destroyed if all he's been drinking is Coca-Cola. But I digress. And through this sheet wall of ice bursts an ice-frosted Eddie riding a Harley-Davidson motorbike ex-World War II, holding... well, not exactly holding. He has a saxophone strapped around his back.
Mm-hmm. It was originally going to be a guitar, though.
I associate Eddie so closely with the saxophone that I can't imagine him being like a guitar riffing, soloing. More of a... honestly, in that way, he'd be more of a Buddy Holly type if he's going to be like...
See, in my head, I was picturing like a Van Halen, like... but I think that's because I love hair metal so much.
He would have been early to the trend if it were in that case. It would be like
10 years early, yeah.
Right. It's like Marty in Back to the Future. Yeah. He steals the idea for blues music and invents it 20 years early or something. Anyway, the refrigerator is interesting to me because it's keeping Eddie alive instead of, if Frank only saw a purpose of using his thinking brain, why didn't he just kill Eddie? Like, he had an idea that there were other things he could possibly do to Eddie, use Eddie for,
Yeah.
that he didn't immediately dispose of the guy.
Well, and he's like frozen in there, but he's still alive, like a lobster. Because lobsters can be frozen, and then when they thaw, they're still alive.
Lobsters make me sad.
Same.
On a whole other level.
But he's like a little lobster.
They just
in the
live
freezer.
their lives like chilling in a tank, and then all of a sudden they're like, cool, going into another tank. Fuck, this is really hot. And then that's just it for them. Those poor lobsters.
But like Eddie's like the lobster, because if you think about it, they froze him in the freezer, they pull him out, and they're gonna cook him for dinner.
Yeah, they were literally like, keep him chilled. We don't want the meat to spoil. And this motorbike that he enters on, it has a spray painted USA 619028 on it, which seems to correlate with the hex color code. And it just looks like the color that the bike has been painted.
Yeah, it's kind of like an olivey green color, so it looks similar to what the color of the bike is.
Which is a funny, like, I think it's like a set or a production designer, like, inside joke of, like, we had to paint this bike this color. LOL, we're gonna literally write Pantone Pacific Blue on the side of it, you know? And there's also a skull sticker on the front, like, hub that matches one of Eddie's tattoos.
Yeah, the one on his forearm. It's that little funky skull.
Did he get that one permanently done, or did he also just draw it on with a blue pen?
I think Eddie loved his bike so much that he was like, man, that logo that I have on the front of my bike, I'm going to get that on my arm.
It's like the guys that are, like, in love with their 1950s Chevy, and they're like, I'm going to name her Darla, and then get Darla tattooed across my heart.
And then it's just the car.
Yeah.
We did also find out that there were 2 different bikes used for that filming section. So there's the Harley Davidson WLA, which is like the beautiful classic bike. I looked it up because I knew nothing about motorcycles.
Me neither.
So I looked up a picture of it and I was like, oh, so like the classic Harley Davidson. Like, it's gorgeous, it's classic looking.
It's also the kind of bike that if Eddie were trying to live up to a stereotypical rock and roller biker fantasy, like, he would buy that bike.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And then the other one that he was using, that they used for, like, the shots where he's riding around the lab, was a Kawasaki KZ900. It's actually also the motorcycle that's featured on the cover of the album Bat Outta Hell, which he was working on during filming.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So then he probably, like, he carried that Eddie-ness with him. Because, like, even you see Meatloaf now, and maybe he's just so himself in the characters that he portrays. Or Eddie...
He's brought a little piece of them with him.
Or just, like, every role is Eddie after that. Because he's just, like, this funny, like, huge character that's big and loud and only shows up for a number, and you remember him for the whole movie, the whole rest of the thing. Like, he's totally one of those character actors that is identifiable, to say the least.
Fair.
Also, in the original script, they had this refrigerator door open to crush some of the, like, Transylvanians, I guess, that were observing the creation scene.
But could you imagine that?
Oh my
Just
gosh.
all of a sudden, like, people are getting crushed
They just
to
get
death.
splattered. Or, like, could you imagine if Frank and Rocky right now just,
Like,
like, movie over, done.
That's
Riff
the
and
end.
Magenta are like, cool, that was faster than we expected. Can you guys leave now so we can go home? And Frank does the silliest noise ever.
Ah, ooh. Super bizarre, like, exclamation.
Columbia, on the other side of the room, who's been hanging out with Brad and Janet and Riff and Magenta.
She lets out the shrillest, highest pitch shriek. So she has, like, this big, like, ham moment where it's, like, just over the top emotion. It's like she's in complete shock and surprise. She totally forgot he existed until all of a sudden he's breaking out of this ice wall.
And it's almost like she had no idea that he was in the deep freeze, or, like, maybe not necessarily that she's even been missing him. Like, you've brought up the idea of him dropping off deliveries. She might have just not been expecting to see him tonight. Yeah. But in the stage show, how we are revealed to Eddie, Columbia happens upon the deep freeze door and opens it and, like, what? You're in here? What? Whoa. So that's why she exclaims that she can't believe she found him. But we get his name right off the bat.
Oh, yeah.
Before we even actually see him, actually.
I think that we get introduced to Eddie faster than we even get introduced to Brad and Janet, honestly.
Yes. Which immediately endears us to this character. We appreciate Columbia's reaction to him. Like, she didn't react to him the way Janet reacted to Frank, for example. So
it wasn't like a scared reaction. It was like total joy and elation.
So we can trust that he is human. For sure.
Yes.
If we're, like, finding out who he is right off the bat, that he's, even though is a total surprise to us, we're not threatened by him.
Yeah, he doesn't have the cloud of mystery surrounding him that, like, Frank does, for example.
And Brad goes to kind of follow Columbia, and Janet's like, where do you think you're going? And just latches onto his arm.
Riff and Magenta are kind of standing off to the side and just monitoring what's going on. Because remember, they, in the back of their mind, they totally have this plan of, like, yeah, we're going to get out of here. We're going to go home. So, I mean, honestly,
however it can be undone.
Yeah.
We like watching it unfold. Richard O'Brien hates that they didn't press that button that's under the alarm, or that one of them didn't manually open the door. He hates that it just falls open.
Does it on its own.
I like to think that Riff knew how much power was going to be needed for the experiment to take place. He knew it was on the same power grid as the refrigerator on the other side of the door. He knew that having to reroute all of the power into the sonic oscillator, like, hey, if it malfunctions, well, let's see what he plans on doing with that if he's so smart.
Yeah.
You know? Let's throw him a curveball.
So again, another cut lines from the original iteration of the script. Eddie, as he's coming out, says, "Stay cool, baby."
Which, coming right out of a freezer, is like chef's kiss. Janet says, "Who's Eddie?"
Riff says, "The delivery boy."
To which Magenta says, "His delivery wasn't good enough, though."
Ooh, spicy.
I like that this gets cut. To just, right off the bat, I don't think Janet needs to interact with Riff and Magenta. No. I don't think Riff or Magenta would be interested in holding a conversation with anybody.
Absolutely not, no.
Like, and that they're giving exposition. I can see in a stage show why it's important, but I'm good with how it's cut. Although, it does give good character insight of maybe why he gets executed. Like, is he not delivering on the drug deal?
See, whereas my theory is He didn't deliver Frank that dick. You know what I'm saying? Like, Frank wanted Eddie. Eddie was like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah, because, okay, I've been on this thing of if Eddie and Columbia are kind of surrogate Brad and Janet characters, that maybe Eddie was experiencing the same bisexual questioning that Bradley J is. But as we get into the lyrics of Eddie's song, I don't think Eddie is gay. I think he's like a confirmed heterosexual and is like proud to exclaim as such, you know? If those lines had transpired, Janet would have fainted again because girl can't take a deep breath or not lock her knees or something.
She needs to like get it together just a little bit.
She might be anemic. Like, at this point, I'm concerned that she's fainted 4 times over the course of the last, 45 minutes. And guests in the gallery start screaming and scrambling as we fast zoom into Eddie riding forward, breaking the sheet of ice. He puts his kickstand down. We kind of hear the music kind of start to rumble in the background. And the Transylvanians on the observation deck all tableau. It made me think like they're trying to become statues among the like other statues in the room.
Yeah, because they're all very dramatically posed.
They're first terrified of him. And then they realize like, oh, I think they recognize him. I think they're afraid of a sudden surprise guest maybe invading on their alien activities. And then they realize, oh, wait, no, we recognize this guy. This is that Elvis impersonator that we've been listening to his 8 tracks out in Transylvania. Because they all they stop, they're waiting to see if it's okay. Eddie takes off his sunglasses and helmet, tosses them to the floor.
Also, quick peep on the background of that shot. The interior of the, like, ramp that is formed from the refrigerator door falling down, it's leopard print.
Yeah.
Eddie is, like, the grooviest dude, honestly.
Well, why'd they put wallpaper on the inside of the... Like, what is Frank doing? Like, why does he think that belongs there? Unless it was... he was storing Eddie there, and Eddie has been alive in there and has created, like, a holding cell of sorts. Because...
Potentially.
Eddie loves his leopard print.
Oh, yeah. He's got the leopard print on his lapels. He used the extra to wallpaper that fridge door. I don't know, man. It's hilarious.
Frank left him in there with crafting supplies. This is kind of the first time we're seeing any reaction out of the Transylvanians that is not measured. They're getting a little bit into the groove, and they weren't surprised at Brad and Janet's arrival. And even when Frankenfurter was singing Sweet Tea, they were like, ooh, fun. We like.
Wow.
But this, they're like a fan of. They love this music. Yeah. And Eddie has so many props. Yeah. And we get all of them in this frame right here.
We've got the sunglasses, we've got the helmet, we've got the saxophone, we've got the motorcycle handlebars. It's just so many things that come into play for this character who is literally on screen for like 5 minutes.
And they're not necessary. I will say, I have particular memories of seeing Eddie's come on with, you know, a bike handlebar that they've taken off of a thrifted bike, and they've taped a flashlight to the front of it. It's an entrance that's meant to have an impact. And like Sweet Tea with that spin and reveal, like Columbia's reaction has to befit something, you know?
Oh, yeah, like, totally.
But you don't need a saxophone. I've seen folks with like pool floaty saxophones
Yeah.
that they like inflate, and that works.
There's also like dollar store cheapy like mini plastic saxophones that I've definitely used before.
And
during
they're
the show.
hilarious.
It's so fun.
Yeah, I love them. Eddie gets off that motorcycle. He does a
Woo!
spins around. And there he is, folks.
Meatloaf, the man himself.
The man with only one name.
He actually has like 3 different names though. So he was 27 during filming. He was born Marvin Lee Aday, but actually later changed his name to Michael, but also just goes by Meatloaf or Meatloaf Aday. So he has many names.
Wait. He goes by Meatloaf a day. Is he telling me the only way to keep a doctor away is a meatloaf a day?
Absolutely.
So doing the research this week, it's so hard to look up a person that is also
The name of food.
Yeah, and like, God, I got so hungry. I found so many 5-star recipes that just I considered, having a cooking lesson on the episode today, talking about the best recipe I could find on meatloaf. But his mother was a school teacher and a singer in a gospel quartet, and his father was a police officer who ended up becoming a businessman selling homemade cough syrup.
Yeah. So what it sounds like from what I read was his dad was in the army during World War II.
Okay.
But was injured from some shrapnel.
Okay.
And then when he was home, he joined the police force and became an alcoholic to deal with his pain. So that's really unfortunate, but it seemed like there was not a good relationship between him and his father at all. Him and his mother were very, very close, though.
That's so interesting, though, because it informs his character in Pick a Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Like, totally, that must be his dad.
Oh, yeah.
Totally a military guy who doesn't understand why he's interested in music. But then a mother who is a soul singer. Like, Meatloaf is soulful.
Oh, yeah.
In his speaking voice, any interview you hear him, he sounds like a good Southern Christian boy that sang in a gospel choir growing up. Like,
yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he started acting in plays in high school. His first few were Where's Charlie and The Music Man. And he actually got his name Meatloaf from his high school football coach because of his weight, which, like, hey, man.
Talk about owning a name.
Yeah.
And
Meatloaf.
this man, like, hey, and it was from one person kind of giving him a
hard time almost, it seems, but,
a picked on nickname.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe in football you're, like, supposed to be beefy.
Yeah, that too.
So maybe it was, like, a positive nickname and it, like, was associated with good things for him.
Like he's like a meathead.
Yeah.
Like he just, like, worked out a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't sports, so, like...
Sports? What? Who?
Could go either way.
Who is sports? And after high school, he went to college in North Texas and isolated himself entirely for 3.5 months after his mother passed away. His friend found him in this, like, depressive state and took him to the airport and put him on the next flight to LA, which, talk about a good friend.
Seriously.
Like, you can't be here anymore.
Yep.
You need to get out of this place. And also recognizing his talent, like sending him directly to LA.
Hey, buddy, get out of here. Go live your best life away from the place that is making you feel this way.
Like, you need to go into isolation.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh.
After arriving in LA, he formed his first band, originally called Meatloaf's Soul, but then ended up becoming Floating Circus, and they had a couple other names. They kind of went through a few different iterations. They were immediately offered 3 recording contracts, which they turned down all of them. They ended up opening for Janis Joplin, The Who, The Fugs, Grateful Dead, like anybody you can imagine. They were like hitting it totally big.
Then he was like, I want to act.
Yeah.
Basically. I don't know why he would, unless he ultimately did want to be an actor, and that's also part of why he came out to LA.
Well, I mean, he was acting in high school.
That's true.
I think he found his like true passion in like theater.
Because you can do both.
Yeah.
He could be the fully rounded performer that he is. Because after all of his success with Floating Circus, he joined the LA cast of the production of Hair.
Look, there it is again, folks. Hair.
Hair is everywhere. Hair there, hair everywhere. And in December of 1972, he was in the original off-Broadway production of Rainbow at the Orpheum Theater in New York. Then he was in the right place to reprise Hair, this time on Broadway.
In 1973, he was then cast as Eddie and Dr. Everett Scott in the original Roxy cast of The Rocky Horror Show.
They split the role for the film. Mm-hmm. And I think that's smart, because it would be confusing for Meatloaf to show up after we've seen like so many other confusing things to happen.
Yeah.
I don't think audiences were there yet. It's like too much of like a Freaky Friday, Parent Trappy thing of now I have to keep it straight that he is not the same person as who we just saw him as.
But he was so bummed. Meatloaf really wanted to be both in the film. Mm-hmm. He actually said that him not playing both roles made the film not as good as the stage production, which I think is really funny because he was so invested in playing both of those characters, which is cute, man. He loved it.
So Meatloaf rarely does any kind of appearance at cons or reunions. He sometimes will show up to sing Hot Patootie, but sometimes he'll also perform it at his shows.
But that's like super rare. Like if you see Meatloaf do a live version of Hot Patootie, you are top of the game Rocky Horror fan, a number one. You know, like it's super rare to see him actually do it.
Consider if you want to record it on and like post it online, or if you want to just like stand there and be
bask in the glory.
Yeah, absorbing it. Yeah, because he's a character.
Oh, totally.
Boy. And while he was working on Rocky Horror, the film, he started working on writing.
No, he was like recording and stuff too. Yeah, he was writing it and recording it. He started just overall producing the album Bat Outta Hell, mm-hmm. which didn't end up being released until about 1977. He was really shopping it around to see which company would give him kind of the best release deal for it, because Meatloaf was already a pretty big name coming from Floating Circus. Mm-hmm. People knew Floating Circus, so it was really exciting for Meatloaf to be putting out an album.
And Meatloaf was the kind of casting in this movie that Jim Sharman was trying to get like swindled into upping the budget to cast more people like Meatloaf, mm-hmm. and more American rock and roll performers.
Yeah.
But he's an anomaly because he was like a rock and roller before he decided to do Broadway stuff. And then he was really more of a Broadway casting into the film, which is more in line with like Barry and Tim and all of the other...
Yeah, exactly.
...male castings, at least.
So, fun fact, from Bat Outta Hell, one of his like big singles, Paradise by the Dashboard Light, he actually convinced Lou Adler to run the music video for that song as a trailer to the movie.
Meatloaf decided to leave his theater career in the past in 74, but he ended up being drawn back in by the National Lampoon show Lemmings as an understudy for John Belushi.
Yeah, so John Belushi and him were really close friends, and John was actually the guy to be like, no, really, like, you're such a great performer. You should really consider doing this show with me I think you would love it, blah, 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 whatever. I think that's so cool that John Belushi and Meatloaf were like BFFs.
It's so... I see it, though, because Meatloaf is totally an alternate reality Blues Brother.
Oh, yeah. Totally. After taking his step back from theater and focusing on his music, he really just hit his stride. And Meatloaf has an insane musical catalog.
Mm-hmm.
After Bat Outta Hell was Dead Ringer, Midnight at the Lost and Found, Bad Attitude, Blind Before I Stop, Bat Outta Hell 2, Back Into Hell.
Back into hell. Ugh.
Welcome to the Neighborhood. Couldn't have said it better. Bat Outta Hell 3, The Monster Is Loose, Hang Cool Teddy Bear, Hell in a Handbasket, and Braver Than We Are. And he's still writing music to this day.
That whole just paragraph of album titles needs to be expanded into a treatment like of a film or of a like stage show, because it is...
I believe he does have a stage show of his like music. Meatloaf is forever. And honestly, I could talk forever about these albums because there is so much content and so many amazing songs, but this isn't a Meatloaf podcast. So I'll just leave it at the album titles. You can do your own research.
Yeah, if it was, I would have said that recipe that I found. Meatloaf can also be seen in Spice World as the girl's bus driver, alongside the other Rocky Horror cameos, Richard O'Brien and Hugh Cecil.
I think that the Spice Girls were, like, totally in love with Rocky Horror. Like,
Totally.
I think that they were really big fans because why else would they have 3 different actors from Rocky Horror all just do, like, small-ish roles in Spice World?
Well, they're UK girls, and they probably grew up with it. They probably went... He also, as I mentioned earlier, plays Jack Black's younger self's dad in Tenacious D and The Pick of Destiny, and also as Robert Paulson in the movie Fight Club.
His name is Robert Paulson. His name is Robert Paulson.
His name is Robert Paulson. That is probably, if I had to rank all of my favorite callbacks, that floats among the top 3.
Oh, it's so good.
Like, I love Oh Shit, We Missed the Bus. And a bread, a muffin, a toast. But in Fight Club, his character gets, I don't want to spoil Fight Club because we don't talk about that. We don't talk about Fight Club, okay? And he shows up and plays this character that you're like, what the fuck is Meatloaf doing in this movie? And then you end up sobbing your eyes out.
Yeah.
For Meatloaf.
Oh, it's a good one.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen Fight Club, please go watch Fight Club.
And that's all. We didn't break the rules, okay? We didn't technically actually talk about it.
We just said the name of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that his name is Robert Paulson.
And I'm going to do one last mention of an appearance. It's the Rocky Horror episode of Glee. I'm sorry. We had to mention it at least one time in this show. We've avoided it all this time. We're 7 episodes in. We had to do it once. He's in the Rocky Horror episode of Glee.
Meatloaf has one stepdaughter whose name is Pearl and a daughter named Amanda. Pearl is married to a guitarist from Anthrax.
Scott Ian.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's one of the talking heads in, like, a lot of the VH1, like, you know, those, like, I love the 90s, I love the 2000s, whatever. Scott Ian did a ton of those as, like, a talking head.
So he's also a pop culture guy.
Yeah, totally.
Cool. And Meatloaf states he has social anxiety, which, same.
Like, who doesn't? But it doesn't seem so much social anxiety as, like, not wanting to talk about certain things. Because on the other hand of that, he is very, very open about his right-leaning political beliefs, specifically a certain soon-to-be ex-president of the United States. So
it would be so awesome if he could do the reunion stuff that now Tim and Nell and everyone are doing, because
it would be really great to talk to him about his, like, theater career in general. Not
His
even just
life.
Rocky Horror, but,
Oh my
like,
gosh.
he, doing some background research on him, I actually had no idea where he had come from, what he had been through in his life, and I have a lot more respect for the guy, honestly.
Yeah, I've always thought he was a fun rock and roller from the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
And he's so prolific.
And he's still making music, which is insane to me.
So if Rocky has the left brain, that would mean Eddie kept the right brain.
And we're making this assumption because the scar on his forehead is on the left side.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
one would assume that they have removed the left half of the brain.
Yeah. I just look at that scar and I'm like, how did they remove anything from there? Like, the scar is totally cosmetic, just so viewers who don't know who this person is that's just busted out of a thing out of nowhere, surprising us. Like, all of the other characters have just busted out of somewhere, surprising us. We see a visible wound to know that he's had some kind of surgery done, and if he's got the right brain, it explains why he's still musically inclined.
Yeah.
He's playing an instrument during the song. He's very poetic with
because
his language.
The right brain is the side that's associated with feelings, imagination, rhythm, arts. He's definitely the more emotional one out of the two, him and Rocky. You know, his solo number is an ode to his first time doing the do. Like,
Yeah.
he's definitely the more reminiscent of the two.
And he's singing and dancing all over the place. Which, like, Rocky's character, he's like the strong silent type.
Yes.
And is way more associated with, like, the linear thinking of the situation. And it's funny because then he has those lines later of, like, you know, this isn't really making sense. I don't know if I can trust these people.
Yeah, his cut lines make him out to be kind of the more logical, factual characters, which makes sense because he has the left brain, which that is associated with.
And it would also make sense why Hot Patootie lyrically makes very little
Logical
surface-
sense.
Yeah, surface logical sense.
So Columbia is standing at the ladder of the deep freeze, biggest, giddiest grin on her face.
She's sinking her nails into her face from excitement.
Yeah, she is so excited.
And it's real emotion. Like, we've seen her kind of get irritated with the guests and kind of be a little sassy with Frankenfurter.
But we haven't had anything past that surface level.
And I'm pretty sure that ladder in this set exists purely for Columbia to be hanging off of right now, and then later for, I think it's Perry, is hanging off of the ladder when the motorcycle is running up the ramp. Because no character actually goes up and down that ladder.
No.
But it's a perfect, like, flat space for Columbia to just, you see her costume, you see her blue socks, like, I love that it gives her a place to just kind of also tableau. And so begins Hot Patootie.
Originally it was called Whatever Happened to Saturday Night.
Which is interesting because, I mean, it is the first line of the song. But if Eddie is truly asking, what happened? Like, dude, where's my car? What happened on Saturday night?
Yeah.
The lyrics and music are by Richard O'Brien, with the musical arrangements for the film by Richard Hartley. It's interesting because it's sandwiched in between Frank's second big number. You know, like, Eddie kind of interrupts.
I Can Make You a Man.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Frank could have just kept going. He could have oiled up Rocky, could have pulled the ropes then to go straight to the honeymoon. But
He had to wait because, you know, greaser from the freezer like a bat out of hell.
yep. there's so much lyrical dissonance in this song. It's like a companion track to Sword of Damocles, because it's a character that's just happily bopping along and casually singing about getting abducted and lobotomied. Like, everyone's like, oh, this is such a great track, instead of hearing the plea that the person is actually exclaiming.
Mm-hmm.
And it indicates for me that both songs are
From the same brain.
yeah, and a cry for help.
Yeah.
But why would they change? Why do you think they changed it to Hot Patootie? Why do you think they made it more of a
I think it makes
single?
I think it makes it a little bit more commercial because it is Meatloaf, you know. So by the time that this film really got big, Meatloaf was already like a famous musician. So whatever happened to Saturday Night isn't as catchy of a title as Hot Patootie, I think, in my personal opinion. So I think that they kind of wanted to make it like a little bit more commercial of like, ooh, Hot Patootie by Meatloaf.
Which we all know is slang for a hot piece of ass.
Oh yeah.
Hot Patootie. The Transylvanians start to realize that there's and they're like, ooh, another musical act. Love cons with musical acts. And Eddie sings to them,
whatever happened to Saturday night when you dressed up sharp and you felt all right.
This song is in the style of like 50s rock and roll, very
Elvis Presley kind of like grooving,
like a crone.
gyrating.
Yeah.
It's more of a pelvis turner.
And he's kind of reminiscing a time in dating culture that like people went to sock hops and drive-ins and car hop diners, and you had like the good old-fashioned weekend, and you would dress like it's Dapper Day at Disneyland, and you'd go out on like a date. Like, you reserved Saturday nights for if the cutie was going to give you a call and ask if they could come pick you up and take you
to
for
Lover's
a drive.
Lane.
Yeah, it literally, like, just to go to a makeup point,
yeah.
Even. He also talks about dressing up sharp, which Rocky has just said he was dressed up with no place to go.
Mm-hmm. Another parallel between the two, for sure.
Yeah, like,
we're just continuing to draw up more and more of, like, these are the same person.
Was Eddie going to the castle to pick up Columbia for a date?
I don't know why you're so stuck on this Columbia being at the castle before Eddie.
I think they probably got there together. He continues doing his delivery, and now Columbia has found all of her friends that she can do drugs with, and she stays at their house waiting for her boyfriend to have his, like, off day and come pick her up. Maybe Eddie was dressed up
to pick her up for a date.
Was gonna come pick up Columbia for a date, and then is like, I'm not in the same place that I fell asleep in on Saturday night. Whatever happened? Because I remember we got ready to go on a date. I don't know if, like, Eddie is kind of being, with this song, if he's kind of being like a surrogate for the people in the 70s that were the greatest generation and who naysayed the free love movements of the 70s, and who are like, well, whatever happened to when you would get dressed up and you would call a girl and you would talk to her mother on the phone before she allowed you to speak to her daughter, and we would meet the young girl before you would get in the car and drive off to whoever knows where. Like, in the 50s and 60s, parents and adults did not like kids starting to explore their sexualities at all ever, period, the end.
Yeah.
But especially not when they were troublemaking teenagers. You know? The camera pans with Eddie as he continues to move toward Rocky Horror. He makes a direct beeline. And Frank's in the background, unconcerned. Like he's like, oh, I forgot. That was the loose end I forgot to tie. Dang it. He's kind of just like standing there with his hands on his hips.
At this point in the song, he doesn't seem concerned with the fact that Eddie's here.
He's just kind of seeing how it goes.
Yes.
Eddie continues.
It don't seem the same since cosmic light came into my life. I thought I was divine.
Okay, so cosmic light could mean a few different things.
Yeah, so my first instinct was cosmic, meaning like outer space,
Yeah.
aliens. Does Eddie know that Frank is an alien? I mean, his uncle is Dr. Scott. Dr. Scott and Frank seem to have this connection.
Ooh.
Did his uncle tell him?
Do you think Eddie was a spy?
Maybe.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Because cosmic is a little too on the nose for me.
Yeah.
Like, cosmic is directly tied to outer space.
If anything, he knows they're aliens and likes and indulges in their lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it's like a light in the darkness for him.
But you had a different interpretation when you first read through it.
I thought like they call it like a twilight light when you're coming out of a surgery, and or when you're like going into anesthesia and you get that like that halo bright light of the surgical light that's over you.
Yeah.
And that being maybe the last thing Eddie remembers seeing is like looking up and seeing
the surgical light from like the
paint
mixer. Yeah.
Yes, the thing that made Rocky a man.
Yeah.
Or even just like any other surgical light if he was put onto an operating table and knocked unconscious.
Totally. I think that that's also like very viable as
cool
a potential meaning.
Thanks. I like that. But I like how, with your interpretation, he says, came into my life and thought I was divine. He's saying to Rocky and to Columbia and Brad and Janet and everyone listening, it's cool that I met this guy. I thought it was the real deal. I thought he loved me. I thought I loved him, maybe. I thought we were good buddies. Or even like the people that think they've been chosen to be abducted by UFOs.
Yeah.
Like he thought he was chosen and the divine specimen.
When really he was just a sacrifice.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah. Yes. Frank does not like Eddie talking to Rocky, but he still doesn't do anything. He's still like observing the experiment. He's seeing what's happening with the two brains being so close together. Like we've never had success on this level before.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're gonna want to start making out with each other, because if you separate two halves of a brain, I like the idea of them wanting to
come back together.
Yeah, reassimilate, and in the sense of if they're physically two separate bodies, deciding to be one person and
Origin of Love style.
Yeah.
Two halves put back together.
Yeah, exactly.
I see where you're going.
And Eddie says,
I used to go for a ride with a chick who'd go. So, funny thing about this song in general, there are a lot of words packed into this very quick melody. And Richard O'Brien originally wanted to play Eddie himself because he didn't think anybody else was going to be able to sing the song.
Spit the lines out.
Because it's so much content in this really quick format.
Yeah, it's
a lot.
You have to
And
keep up.
he, like, fell in love with Meatloaf because Meatloaf had that soul behind it, and he knew how to get out these lines in a way
And
that
hit
came
those
across.
notes.
Oh, so good.
We haven't gotten to the notes things, his upper register yet. But he snaps and points to Columbia like,
He, like, motions to her, like, get over here.
you know you belong with my arm around you.
Yeah.
Like that kind of biker. Come over here, babe. You're mine. She runs to him. He picks her up and swings her onto his motorcycle. He says,
And listen to the music on the radio.
which everyone on the observation deck has started to bop and groove. They know and appreciate music. And now Eddie is directly talking about the influence music has had on his life, and specifically in this one instance.
I just had a light bulb go off.
Tell me.
So, we see the Transylvanians in the very beginning riding in on motorcycles.
Mm-hmm.
They see Eddie ride out on a motorcycle. They're scared until they realize he's riding out on a motorcycle. Did they go, oh, he's one of us? It literally just had that light bulb go off.
And they think he's another Transylvanian?
Maybe.
Maybe. Because, okay, I thought that too. I thought motorcycles, the Transylvanians came on motorcycles. I was thinking, like, we later see Frank's fan merchandise room dedicated to Eddie.
Is it Frank's?
It's in his castle.
Well, Columbia
it's the
lives
room
in the
Columbia,
castle.
yeah, is in when she's singing Eddie's Teddy. But if Eddie is this, like, Elvis impersonator, and Dr. Scott is trying to make contact with alien species, and he plays Eddie's music sometime.
Yeah.
And says that it's Eddie, and he can play saxophone. And now all of the Transylvanians are Eddie's biggest fan. And they all ride motorcycles because they saw Eddie ride a motorcycle.
All right.
Maybe?
Maybe.
I keep going back and forth on it because...
Yeah, it's a very weird thing because it's like they're really afraid until, like, the music starts going a little bit. But I'll loop back around in a minute.
We need to think about it. Eddie is, like, totally in love with Columbia. Like, you can see it in his eyes. Do you think there's any possibility that the Transylvanians trapped Eddie?
I don't know if it would be like the Transylvanians as a whole. I think if anybody, like, trapped him, it would be Frank and Riff and Magenta.
Okay.
Because Frank and his henchmen. You know, I don't think it would have been like all of the Transylvanians as a whole. They have their own stuff to worry about.
They're on vacation right now.
Yeah, they're at the convention.
Right. This is their weekend off, and they're going to go back to whatever Denton, Ohio, Texas, California, probably. Like, whatever Denton they're from. Eddie continues to reminisce. A saxophone was blowing on a rock and roll show. We climbed in the back seat and really had a good time. He's just saying, like, wow, I love it when music makes me so horny that I just want to jump over the front seat of my car to try rounding second base in the back seat, you know? He's also having so much trouble controlling that saxophone.
Oh, I know. So since it's like wrapped around his body on like a sling almost, it just keeps kind of flinging all over the place and you see him like swat it back so many times.
And it's a real saxophone.
Yeah.
So it's like smacking him in the arm and he's still high energy, still turning it up to 12. We haven't talked about the shadow cast stage directions for this scene yet.
Yeah. So shadow casting this scene is honestly, as a seasoned Columbia, my favorite part of the show. Because this is the scene where you really have your other half. Frank has Rocky, Riff has Magenta, Brad has Janet, and then Columbia is just kind of all on her own until Eddie gets there. And that's, like we said, the first time that we get real emotion out of her. So you finally get to turn it all the way up, and it's so much fun.
So Eddie comes out, usually stage left.
Eddie comes out, drops his stuff, calls over Columbia. Columbia goes over, and then he loops back around to give Brad the saxophone.
All I know is I stay pretty stationary. Like, Brad and Janet are still observing the experiment taking place.
Brad and Janet aren't super necessary in this scene because the only, like, interaction that he has is shoving the saxophone at Brad. So it doesn't really matter where you're standing as long as you're standing somewhere that Eddie can get to you easily.
And then is Rocky...
So he is kind of with Frank. So Frank and Rocky are kind of hanging out near each other. And then at one point, Frank will pull Rocky and put him off stage.
Take him off stage, and then Frank will also leave at one point to go get the weapon. And
usually leave stage left where the Eddie came out of the quote-unquote freezer.
Yes. Oh, boy. Eddie is so much fun in Shadowcast. Like, that is what picks the energy back up in the crowd. Because this is like, if we've started the show at midnight, we're almost at 1 a.m., people are starting to get a little sleepy, but you have a motorcycle hop on the scene and start this huge high energy moment.
Rock and roll saxophone solos.
Well, it's also going to turn into watching two people doing, like, insane swing dancing.
Yeah!
So Eddie continues singing.
Hot Patootie, bless my soul. I really love that rock and roll.
He's pointing with so much energy to Brad and Janet that he's, like, shaking. Like, you guys think this is a fun song and dance number, but y'all need to listen to me, while being pretty much, like, unconcerned with Frank hearing any of the warning. I think it's interesting that Eddie doesn't know Brad and Janet, sees that they're new on the scene, and is like, I need to warn them about these people.
Yeah.
The first time he sings the chorus, Columbia is eating the rings on his hand as an appetizer.
She's licking his rings, and she is just over the moon in love with Eddie. Like, cannot get her eyes broken away from him. Like, she is just one track mind focused on him.
If he asked her to kiss his boots, she would.
She would.
Yeah. And the second time he starts singing, they start doing the swing dancing moves that are frantic and
so
messy.
High energy.
High energy. They need to get it out of their system. It's like they need to dance right now. They have not seen each other in a week or however long it's been, and we need to dance with each other. Because Eddie's saying music gives people an excuse to at least start dancing, but we all know what some dirty dancing will lead to.
Yeah, nobody puts baby in a corner. You know what? Looping back to your initial theory that Eddie is like a celebrity for the Transylvanians, the Transylvanians are all singing along and they know the lyrics. So maybe you're onto something.
Okay.
Because they already know the words.
Okay, what if Hot Patootie is a single that Eddie has put out in his life? You know, that's just Eddie's number one hit. And he knows the words so well that when he comes out of this surgery, he just starts spouting them off.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Transylvanians are singing along. They're dancing in various, like, so many styles. They're ridiculous. They're, like, punch dancing.
Yeah.
And
like doing like a shoulder shimmy back and forth with each other.
And mirroring each other's, like, facial expressions. Like, they're doing, like, mime posing. All of this choreography is, I love it. It is David Tagore, again, building this environment and telling duos of Transylvanians to have all of these different dancing types and styles. Like, it really feels like a party with chemistry and character history. Like, these people know each other so well. because they also just do. Those actors know each other so well. Eddie wraps up the Hot Patooties, bless my soul, I really love that rock and roll, by kicking the camera lens with a callback we love, which is eat shit and die. Which, he's aware of the camera being there.
Yeah.
Is he aware of the Transylvanians observing him?
I think that he knows that the Transylvanians do observations because he knows that they're aliens. Cosmic light, he knows they're aliens. He knows that they're there to observe humans.
Because he's, well, okay, so he's talking to Brad and Janet, but a lot of it is directed, like, in the camera's angle. Like, he doesn't quite break the fourth wall as much as Frank does, but he is aware that he's being filmed. It makes me like the Transylvanian reality of this being like an episode of Big Brother.
Yeah, totally.
And them being like, oh, what? Eddie is on this episode? Whoa! We weren't expecting to see him. Because he might be, like, the Elvis of Transylvania.
Yeah.
I know I said it already that Frank has this room in his house that either Columbia decorated or he decorated like he decorated the rest of the house with things he is in love with, which is, like, the human body and busts and statue forms. So maybe the aliens are worshipping Eddie.
Maybe. Very possible. During this little dance break that they have, Peggy Ledger says, "Lovely party."
She's the same person who says she always cries at weddings. Why is she having a good time at this party and not so good a time at a traditional Episcopalian wedding ceremony? What are Transylvanians saying about traditional marriage ceremonies and customs? Like, maybe she's saying, like, we need more dancing. Maybe it doesn't need to take place in a church. Maybe it doesn't need to be between a man and a woman. Maybe it doesn't need to be about a woman giving up her life, liberty, and happiness to become
Property of a man.
a Mrs. Ralph Hapshat, you know? As opposed to, it's like, this is a lovely party. Like, maybe the Transylvanians were invited to this party as a Frank's getting married, y'all.
Yeah.
Frank's finally getting his paradise. The Transylvanians were like, oh, this is so convenient. The two Denton events are taking place on the same weekend.
Same day.
Same day, in fact.
Also, there's like a little red string tied to the railing up on that little balcony area.
For why?
We don't know.
Who knows?
If y'all
There's
know
no
why
way.
there's a red string, please let us know.
There's no way to find out. Eddie has finished his, like, dance break sax solo break and starts to direct himself toward, more specifically, Brad and Janet. He walks toward Janet saying, "My head used to swim from the perfume I smelled. My hands kind of fumbled with her white plastic belt."
For me, this is like, he is reminiscing about his first time.
Yeah.
He is in lust with this girl. Her perfume is making him drunk. So he's, you know, in over his head, stumbling over his words, fumbling with her belt.
And him talking about fumbling and being uncertain and inexperienced
Yeah.
is more support that this is him reminiscing losing his virginity and how intimate that is for him. He finally gets rid of that saxophone.
Yeah, he hands it to Brad, which,
After
like...
it, like, I think he even hits Nell a couple of times with that saxophone because it's just flying all over the place.
But, like, why Brad? My theory is he's passing the torch. Like you said, Columbia and Eddie were the first Brad and Janet, or at least the last Brad and Janet that came to the castle. So he's like, all right, I know I'm gonna die, so, like, You can take this thing now.
I need to give the saxophone to somebody.
Yeah.
I don't have time. He doesn't have a will written to, like, you know, give it to somebody else. So, yeah. And I think it's also, like, the biggest, most inconvenient prop to have to hold, that it's so awkward that he hands it to Brad. And then that, you know, Barry gets stuck with it for the whole rest of the scene, just holding this big, heavy
saxophone.
Yeah. Eddie continues.
I'd taste her baby pink lipstick, and that's when I'd melt, and she'd whisper in my ear, tonight she really was mine.
And he's remembering specific smells, touches, tastes, like the entire specific experience of losing his virginity. And like he says, baby pink lipstick, which is expressly feminine.
Yeah.
And youthful. Like, baby pink is a color that no sensual woman, like, women wear red lipstick. And we've seen Frank's lips in red.
Mm-hmm.
So Eddie is saying, like, no, he likes the soft, sweet, feminine things. They're finally kissing with tongue, I guess. And tonight is the big night. Finally, she's been talking about letting me maybe go all the way, and she just whispered in my ear,
she's mine.
We're going all the way, folks. Eddie gets back in front and puts some hair oil on. Buddy Holly was singing his very last song. He had sex hair, so he had to, you know, get it recoiffed after hooking up in the back seat. Brad and Janet are, like, in their early 20s.
Sure.
Columbia's in her early 20s.
Sure.
How old is Eddie supposed to be?
So, he says Buddy Holly was singing his very last song, which makes me think he's talking about somewhere right around the day that music died. So the day that Buddy Holly died, which was in 1959. So he could have been like a teenager in 1959. I'm thinking between like 30 and 35. Like early 30s.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Eddie's a little bit older because Dr. Scott is also of a certain age. So if Dr. Scott's in his 60s, it would make sense to have a nephew
in his 30s.
In his 30s.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could be younger. Eddie could be younger. But if he's like reminiscing hearing Buddy Holly on the radio, he's also talking about his very last song, which Eddie is singing his own swan song right now. He says, with your arms around your girl, you tried to sing along. And I think he's just trying to get handsy.
Oh, yeah.
TBH. He's serenading Janet, giving her the look, the up and down, and she's like...
She's kind of going for it.
Yeah,
like,
she's more, I would say more into Eddie than she was into Rocky. Because Eddie is charming. Like, he's fun, he's energetic, and Janet is like coyly batting her eyes at him. She's being a little flirtatious, and right in front of Bradley J, which he does not like.
No. Brad is like very sensitive.
Eddie continues, it felt pretty good.
Woo!
Woo! Really had a good time.
During this, Columbia jumps up onto him, legs wrapped around his waist, and they start to do these lifts almost. We don't see all of them on camera, but in the stage shadow casting universe, we do 3 swinging lifts.
Eddie has his hands on Columbia's hips and is just like flinging her wildly, which I've seen photos of this moment in Shadowcast, and it makes me scared for our Columbia performers sometimes.
Oh, yeah, I've watched a number of Columbias be dropped on their heads.
Oh my gosh, be careful.
Yeah, it's really, only do the lifts with somebody that you know can actually hold you up.
The lifts. Who can complete the lifts?
There are alternatives.
Yeah.
You can do other things. One of the alternatives that I've done is just repeat the dance, the swing dance from the previous verse. Or you can do kind of side to side. So you're still doing like a lift, but instead of going up and down, you're doing side to side. Yep. And that's a little bit more doable for people who are not as well versed in the vertical lifts.
Eat a banana beforehand.
Limber up.
Yeah, do a couple minutes of planks if you're an Eddie, so that you have the arm strength and you don't hurt your back or Columbia's back.
Also seen an Eddie drop a Columbia directly on her heels instead of sliding her between his legs at the end, and she broke her heel bones on both of her feet. So that was fun.
So practice.
Please practice.
This is, at this point, a contact sport. You now have to coordinate this choreography.
I would definitely say that this is the most dangerous part of the show.
Yeah. So be careful. Coordinate with your Eddie and Columbia beforehand. This is not one of those where you, like, sometimes there's like a touch-a where I'm late to the theater and I know my Rocky and I can go to him and just be like, hey, we're going to just do like 3 lifts and then a drop, right? That's what we'll do for touch-a. You can definitely fly by the seat of your pants for that. Do not fly by the seat of your pants for...
No, please, please, please practice. Don't injure yourself or your partner during this scene.
Eddie is talking about really loving and enjoying sex and not hiding or shaming his desires and singing it from the top of his lungs to complete strangers, to Brad and Janet. Here I've just laid out for you how I lost my virginity, and I hope you guys can understand how special it was for me, because I'm remembering it so vividly right now.
The camera cuts to Pam Obermeyer and Stephen Calcutt dancing, and then it pans over to Perry and Kimmy
doing their punch dancing.
And then it cuts back to Eddie and Columbia. He's just doing the lifts, throwing her around, tossing her like a football, casual. He then slides her between his legs and lies down on top of her on the floor. They're making out, rolling around.
She is excited that Columbia seems so happy, and like earlier in the elevator she was asking who everyone's attached to.
Yeah.
And now she feels like she's part of the group. She gets to see who Columbia's dating. Oh, this is fun. We get backstory. Oh, they really love each other. They're like, they're really comfortable with each other, and they're rolling around on the floor.
Eddie sits up and she's hanging onto his scarf. She pulls him back
in. She wasn't done. She needed more kisses.
And then they roll over, and Columbia is now on top of Eddie.
But Meatloaf and Nell sang and danced to the same choreography at the film's 15th anniversary.
I know, how
at their
cute
reunion.
Is that? That's the best.
I think they could probably still do it now.
Oh, I totally do not doubt that they could 100% still do this.
I think Nell could do it. I think she probably still practices and is like, if they need me to do it, I will be ready. Nell is never unprepared. They're just rocking and rolling all over the floor in front of everybody. They do not give a flying fart who is voyeuristically watching. Riff and Magenta are not watching, though. They dance into the refrigerator and are doing like a similar swing dance, like kind of spinning each other around. Rocky is dancing with dynamic tension.
He's doing a very robotic kind of flexy dance that's very strange.
All he knows is dynamic tension. That's it. He doesn't even know how to walk yet.
Once Frank realizes that Rocky is getting into the groove, he has had enough. Mm-hmm. He is absolutely done at this point.
Mm-hmm. We still don't know Riff and Magenta's relationship at this point, like if we were newbies to this movie.
Yeah.
They're dancing like they are attached, like they're dating. Brad and Janet think that they may be
a couple.
Right. And Frank is trying to find his other half.
Yeah.
Now we see them dancing together. It's just so strange to find out later that they're siblings. Yeah. And it's kind of, it doesn't get revealed until the very end.
Yeah.
Very end that they're siblings. Which we will
So strange.
I need to sit on that one a little bit longer and think about it. And they're also just like adding to the chaos. They're so uninterested in helping Frank control any of this madness that is ensuing. They could put Rocky in the elevator.
No, they don't care.
Stop Eddie.
Their plan is already to take Frank down. So they're like, by any means necessary. So if Eddie's going to be the demise of Frank, might as well let it happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whatever gets the job done.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone at this point is singing Hot Patootie, Bless My Soul. I really love that rock and roll. They keep repeating it over and over. It is their heart's refrain. Honestly, like, Hot Patootie, sex, bless my soul, aren't we lucky to get it? And aren't we also so lucky to have music?
Yeah.
Isn't it so awesome that as a species we have
created
sex and music, and aren't those things awesome? He's like markedly talking about hooking up with a woman.
Yeah, it's very clear from the lyrics that he is singing about a woman.
And there's no hesitation in his attraction to the female species. Like, it's not like...
He wasn't singing to seduce Rocky or to seduce Brad. He was specifically going up to Columbia and Janet and singing at those two.
Mm-hmm. And I don't get any inkling that he's interested in Frank.
Me neither.
It's like he forgets Frank is there when Rocky was like running from Frank at every opportunity and trying to stay away from him. Like, Eddie... It's like, oh, he's there. Oh, okay. Hey,
oh, yeah, that guy.
Hey. Picking up my girlfriend. See you later. You know? He is reminiscing about how much he loves sex and is spending his final moments literally telling everybody how he lost his virginity. And he's warning to Brad and Janet, hey, guys, your first time is important. Like... Losing your virginity is significant. Don't blow your first time on someone who's not special because you will remember it forever. Good, bad, or ugly, you always remember your first time. We get 4 bars of instrumental with a sick-ass sax solo as the guests on the observation deck are on kickline fantasy and do their step, step, step kick dance. And I love this shot because it's 2 different filmed moments of the dance, so they could fit everybody on the flat deck for one shot and fit everybody really close together, and then they space everybody out for when the motorcycle is going to go up and around the ramp. But it also, I like it because did they time warp locations? Are they shapeshifters?
Maybe.
Did they transport, teleport 6 feet apart from each other all of a sudden?
I'm just saying.
It's possible.
It's a possibility.
And Eddie picks Columbia off of him, sets her down, and gives her the most emphatically blown kiss.
Yeah.
Like, passionate, and like, he doesn't know the next time he might see her. Sort of a thing.
Like a, bye, baby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Frank grabs Rocky and escorts him into the elevator and slams the gate shut.
Eddie gets back onto his motorcycle, starts up the engine. We get a close-up of Eddie's hands, first with his knuckles that say love across the fingers, pulling the clutch, and his headlamp turns on. We're getting this intercut with the guests in the gallery doing their dancing. And then we see Eddie's other hand that says hate, twisting the accelerator on the motorcycle handlebar. And these tattoos are blue ink pen.
Oh, yeah.
100%. Did he just write those on his knuckles when he was waiting in the deep freeze?
He was just bored in there.
Yeah, my life, it's a complicated split between the duality of love and hate.
Why did they put his bike in there with him?
Yeah. Why'd they give him a method to escape and then are like, ha ha ha, no doors anyway. You think you might get out, but not gonna get out. Because he's looking for an exit too. He starts to make the same loop
that Rocky does.
Yeah, of going up the ramp behind the tank and then back down behind the elevator. And he too does one lap, realizes he didn't miss any doors anywhere, continues to sing Hot Patootie, Bless My Soul. I really love that rock and roll. We see a close-up of Meatloaf. You think he's on the motorcycle, and you're looking through the windshield of the motorcycle. That's not what they rigged up.
Yeah, so Meatloaf was really afraid of riding the motorcycle in this scene, since it was like up a ramp, down a ramp, kind of crazy. He was really scared to do it. So they had not only stunt doubles actually riding the motorcycle for those shots, but the close-up shots of him were him sitting on a wheelchair with the windshield attached to the front of it.
Which is why it's so close, because they can't show that there's no bike.
Yeah.
But you get to see his black eye, that scar in more of a clear detail. And
in one shot, it's actually mirrored.
Yeah, which Frank loves his mirror images. He loves having a David and a Divad and a Mona Lisa and a Lona Misa. Like, I think it's interesting we're seeing a mirrored shot of Eddie going up and down the ramp.
Yeah.
As he's going up, the guests are reacting in various ways. They're jumping out of his way. They're afraid they're going to get run over. Even though they all practically almost mowed down Brad and Janet earlier in the evening when they were walking in the rain. Those Transylvanians. But this stunt double that subbed in for Meatloaf was so much smaller than him. He was more of the body type of like Richard O'Brien, like a skinny guy.
Yeah. And
he had to be padded so heavily to just resemble Meatloaf's body type. Apparently, in one of the takes of him riding out of the elevator and down the ramp, the motorcycle fell on him. It was either when he was going off the refrigerator door ramp. I think that's when Patricia Quinn talks about it happening. But it may have also happened like he rode off of the circular ramp that he was actually driving on. And the motorcycle landed on him. And everybody on set, like, everything stopped. Everyone was so afraid that he, like, died right there in front of him because he laid so still for, like, a solid minute, you know? And then he just, like, pops up and is, like, good and fine and ready to keep going. And they're like, are you okay? And he was like, yeah, we were just making, sure that I didn't break any bones. And that I'm good to keep walking. So...
While Eddie is riding around in the lab, Frank stumbles into the fridge and stops Riff and Magenta from dancing, pushes them out. Frank goes over to one of the walls where there seems to be just a bunch of champagne bottles in like a storage area, pulls a pickaxe out of the champagne bottles, ? Uh-huh. And hides it behind his back and walks back out of the freezer.
And he just will not let Riff and Magenta have a good time.
No.
Back to work, servants. Like, it's, for all intents and purposes, if this is a family reunion of sorts, this is just as much their family reunion. Like, they're kind of hosting, I get. Yeah. Like, I don't know why Frank won't let them have a little bit more of a good time.
Rocky, who's in the elevator, is rattling the gates. It's almost like he knows what's coming.
Yeah, and, like, he thinks he could maybe prevent what's about to occur and, like, stop Eddie's / his own death, maybe?
Yeah, he definitely, it seems like he feels a connection between the two of them, for sure.
But with Frank locking Rocky in the elevator, he knows that seals off the exit.
Yeah.
And knows that if Eddie knows that's the only way out. Sorry, it's in use.
Yeah, Rocky's in there. You can't use it. Sorry, bye.
You're not going to get over there fast enough to get Rocky out of there. Because he doesn't put Rocky in the elevator earlier. Frank has the plan of, okay, I should have killed him after I removed half his brain. Gonna finish off the work I left.
So Eddie rides his bike into the middle of the scene and stops. Columbia runs for him. He gets off the bike, picks her up, and swings her around and plops her down onto the seat.
And she'll stay there for the rest of the scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, she isn't exactly putting up with Frank's shit no more. Like, that rose-tinted lens is maybe
Starting to fade.
Yeah, like Eddie is not one of the Transylvanians. Like, she's been immersed in this environment.
It's like he woke her up to what's really going on.
Or just, like, the outside world.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I have been here for a really long time. He continues to sing Hot Patootie, Bless My Soul. Everyone is singing. I really love that rock and roll. The camera tracks back in an ultra close-up of Frank as he walks forward past Magenta and Riff Raff. Everyone kind of realizes what's happening all at once. Columbia sees Eddie seeing Frank menacingly approaching him. The camera starts to pan, and Frank is kind of just maneuvering through all of the people that have come downstairs now, because as Eddie was, circling the ramp, all of the Transylvanians either jumped off of the off the observation deck or ran to the downstairs.
Yeah, Frank raises up that pickaxe, and we cut from that to Columbia giving us her best Scream Queen scream, digging her nails into her face. It's
scream, 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 scream.
Yeah, it's
scream.
very reminiscent of Psycho, the shower scene in Psycho, where you see the knife come through and then you see her screaming and then you cut back to this and you don't really get to see the action, but you see the emotion.
Real violence occur. Like, you don't see Frank lay the end of this pickaxe into any piece of Eddie, but Columbia's reaction to it, Eddie's reaction to being like overpowered by Frank, informs us of the like true terror of the situation.
Yeah.
And yeah, totally like Psycho, because we have to, it's all up to our imagination to see how bad Frank is attacking Eddie. Eddie is backing into the refrigerator. He starts crawling deeper into the fridge. And why an ice pick?
I know, it's very bizarre.
Like, if there are ice cubes in the refrigerator that Frank, like, I guess gets ice from there, and they're in giant ice, if, like, he serves his drinks with ice that he's chipped off of an ice block that he keeps in the lab fridge, like, then a pickaxe makes sense. But it's also, like, that kind of uncanny thing of, like, it being such a strange weapon. It's not a knife. It's not
like a baseball bat or a meat cleaver or a machete or any of the like go-to
more slasher choices of weapon. Frank allows Eddie to have this big blowout number in the middle of his ceremony, in the middle of his presentation, and he doesn't interrupt him at any point or try to kill him any sooner in the number. Like,
well, Frank loves a good show too.
Yeah, he loves a con with musical numbers. But it's like total mood whiplash where we're dancing and grooving and jiving, and all of a sudden
someone's being murdered.
Yeah, we're seeing someone getting picked to death. It's so disorienting because it's done so rapidly in succession that I think people forget Eddie gets killed.
Yeah.
I think people who've only seen it a handful of times are like, oh yeah,
that guy. Oh yeah,
Meatloaf's in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot Meatloaf was in that movie.
So we get a really nice shot of the refrigerator, Frank with his back to the camera, striking down with the ice pick. He hits the ramp door. Riff Raff and Magenta are standing nearby. We get screams from Eddie.
Screams from Columbia.
Yeah.
Could be screams from Janet.
Yeah,
We
honestly,
don't
it's
see-
just screaming from off screen.
Yeah, we don't see Brad and Janet reacting at all, which is one of my great mysteries of Rocky Horror, is like, why don't Brad and Janet run out of the house as soon as they're out of Frankenfurter's,
I mean, maybe they're too scared at this point.
or maybe
They've
they
been
don't see? Do you think that
I don't know.
There's just so much blood. There's so much blood. Like, Riff and Magenta are just standing there. They are not helping Eddie. They're not stopping Frank. They're not trying to interfere at all, because this is all Frank's family drama. Like, of course this had to happen in the middle of the convention. Of course his dirty laundry would have to show up in the middle of the convention, is like Riff and Magenta's feeling on it.
Totally.
Eddie just goes back into this deep freeze because
It's like his home at this point. It's where he feels the safest. So he's like, well, maybe I can go back in here and everything will be fine.
But Rocky 2 returns to the tank.
Yeah.
At the end of Sword of Damocles. So it's like Eddie realizes there's no escaping. Fate is what it is. And at least he got to go out with a bang, like with a big number. Frank is still holding the ice pick. He's moves into the streaming cold fridge air, which kind of obscures his face. Before he gets obscured, he's got this slasher smile.
Very much
so
Nancy
creepy.
from The Craft, like big creepy grin on his face.
It's almost like he's baring his teeth, like he's being aggressive, but it's also so frightening because it's his sheer joy at murdering Eddie. Like, he's so thrilled. It's like Jack in The Shining going up the stairs. He's like so excited that he's like, and that someone can have that reaction to be murdering not only like a stranger. He knows Eddie personally.
Yeah.
And he's murdering him.
We get more shots of Columbia screaming and putting her hands to her face. There is now a river of blood on the floor between Riff and Magenta's legs. Frank stumbles forward to the entrance of the refrigerator, caught a little embarrassed. He drops the ice pick like a mic drop, like totally like, boink.
Just effectively ending the number.
Yeah.
Like, that's how that song ends. And with how evenly framed everyone is right now. We got Frank, who's the perpetrator. And then we have his accomplices, the two folks who witnessed it happening and didn't feel the need to step in. But then we also get the framing of Annabelle and Hugh Cecil at the very outside edge of the frame. You know, reminding us that
There
it's
are
not
other people here.
Yeah, it's not just the 6 people standing in a room. There's like 50 people here who all just watched a guy get murdered, and nobody is asking, who was that guy? Why'd you kill
Everybody's
him?
just standing around, not really doing anything, while you still are hearing Columbia screaming bloody murder from off camera.
There's this trope called Break the Cutie, that this is part 1 for Columbia, where we're introduced to this sweet, lovable young girl that you root for and you want to see happy and fulfilled, and instead the writers just like slowly torment the character and break them apart bit by bit and make them like suffer horribly. So, you know, Columbia's doomed. Hate to say it. In the original stage show, there's a direction that Janet is the one screaming instead of Columbia, which is interesting because it answers a little bit of my question of why aren't Brad and Janet concerned at all by this. And I like the idea of Janet being terrified not knowing what the heck is going on. Brad still being like, "It's fine, Janet. We're just visitors here." And people just ignoring Janet because they've otherwise been ignoring Janet the whole night.
Yeah, she's just been dramatic for being dramatic's sake the whole rest of the night.
She's fainted 4 times already, so they're like, "Oh boy, she's screaming. Can't she shut up?"
Again, in the original script, Magenta is picking up ice cubes and placing them in an ice bucket because she's so bored with the situation that she's finding something else to do.
Yeah.
And I also think that that is hilarious because Magenta is the sass queen I've loved my entire life.
Hell yeah. And if we were shadow casting this scene, Eddie will have gone up and down the aisles.
In the theater.
You know, fun audience interaction. We usually have Transylvanians in the aisles doing some type of hand jive with the audience to just encourage interaction.
They'll usually kind of chase Eddie or be chased by Eddie, more like it. They are chased by Eddie. Eddie winds back up on stage, and Frank will then chase him back into where he entered from.
And Frank is so, like you said, he's like a little embarrassed that this happened in front of guests. So he explains it as one from the vaults. Describing Eddie as someone just from his past, maybe an ex. Like it's a can of worms that's not even worth going over with everybody. Like, oh, too much history. One from the vaults. But if we were virgins and have never seen this movie before, we wouldn't know that Rocky has half of Eddie's brain. We wouldn't know that the songs are companion songs and being sung by the same
person.
Brain.
Yeah.
I don't know. It doesn't get addressed, and it's so confusing. Like, nobody
acknowledges
that any of it happened, and we're just moving on. Riff in this originally was going to drag Eddie's dismembered body, so hacked to bits, back into the fridge. And Frank was originally supposed to say, "And so perish all those who reject my love."
So Eddie rejected Frank.
Yep.
I think it gives a little too much away.
Yeah.
You and I have come to this conclusion without knowing this line before.
Uh-huh.
So I think that it still gets the point across, but also maybe we've watched this movie too many times.
Right. Right. Exactly. Like, it would be very helpful if it were revealed at that point that Frank is willing to kill people who spurn his advances, because that's important information if Brad and Janet are now trapped and know that Frank will kill them if they don't want to have sex with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives too much away. I like it being a reveal later.
Frank at this point realizes his pink rubber gloves are covered in blood, and he holds his hands out for Magenta to take his gloves off of him.
She reverses them, pulls them off, and at the same time, we hear rattling at the elevator gate, and oh yeah, we forgot.
Rocky's still in the elevator.
Frank goes, "Oh, baby." Which is an interesting line. He calls him a baby right after murdering Eddie, like the juxtaposition of a character just being born and a character being killed in front of our eyes. It just emphasizes the circle of life. He stumbles away from the refrigerator, and we see in the background Eddie slumped over
In the corner.
dead in the corner. And what a convenient place to hunt your prey.
Yeah, you keep him chilled.
Chilled for later preparations. Frank goes to Rocky in the elevator, opens the gate, and then leans across from him because Rocky's upset.
So is Rocky upset because he's worried that Frank is going to kill him too? Or is he like, hey, I know what's going on here?
Yeah, like Eddie remembering Eddie existed. It's not just a brain transplant. It's not just, he didn't just get $1 Million Man upgraded in body. Like, oh, his old body still exists. I don't like that. I don't like that you didn't tell me about this. I don't like that you didn't make me a part of this plan. And he's not a willing participant in the transplant. Rocky just is mad dogging Frank. Or he was originally going to have a line saying, oh no, my little Adonis, you're much too beautiful to be destroyed.
But it was changed to, don't be upset. It was a mercy killing. He had a certain naive charm, but no muscle. The two lines are phrased a little bit differently so that it's like, instead of Frank praising Rocky, my little Adonis, to don't be upset.
And he's saying it like Eddie had misery to be put out of. Like, oh, I just took him out back and shot him. Like, he really was suffering. You should be relieved for his sake that he's no longer suffering. When Frank is the cause of the original suffering, like, he's the one who did the brain transplant. So
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same thing.
Eddie didn't seem like he was suffering too much either, because Eddie was dancing, he was singing, he was riding a motorcycle.
He seemed pretty cognitive.
Yeah, it didn't seem too much like he was needing to be put out of his misery.
Yes. And this shot is so interesting because the close-up of Frank was reshot after the entire production had wrapped.
Yeah, it was post-production.
They rebuilt one pink tile wall and put one wall of the elevator behind him so he could, be framed appropriately. They felt it was important enough
to keep the line in.
Yeah, and to have Tim come back, be in fresh, full face. It's got different lighting. It looks a little weird. Like, when you know that it was shot at a different time, it does stick out a little bit that it was not all filmed on the same day. There's this great interview of Tim behind the scenes filming the movie.
Yeah.
Where he talks about the differences between how he performs on stage versus screen. And he talks about how you can't always use the same facial expressions because they won't translate in a big theater house. And I love that he gets the opportunity so many times in this film to do the quirky eyebrow movements and
the mouth movements.
He crinkles his nose, and there's so much expression in this one frame. They would be a miss if they had not reshot this frame.
Yeah, it's honestly a really good shot, and I don't think that this scene would have read the same without it.
I agree. We get enough of a break of Rocky that when we cut back to him and he flexes his muscle with that drum beat,
Boom.
Where we all fall over. That's what it actually is. It's like if we all fainted, that's the collective sound of all of us fainting.
But it wouldn't have had that same impact if all of it was shot in that wide frame.
I agree. It has a good transition.
A certain naive charm.
Absolutely. He shows him his muscle. He flexes his arm, rests it on Frank's shoulder, which he's just so thrilled about. Frank has wanted all night to just be able to touch Rocky, and the whole time he was getting unbandaged, he couldn't catch him. And then he had to give him all of his presents, so he couldn't really touch him then. And then Columbia got to oil him up and stuff. So all he's been wanting to do is play with his new toy.
For the Shadowcast, you have Frank and Rocky in the same place that you've been using for the elevator. For Frank's reveal, for all of that, they're going to be in that same location.
And you'll have Brad, Janet, Riff, Magenta on, like, the opposite side of the stage so Frank can move toward them. And if we have Transylvanians, it's fun to, like, line them up along the front of the stage. Since this is all happening in the lab, as a Shadowcast, you should feel free to play with the audience like they're your guests. If you want to get creative and have Frank being, like, walking up and down the aisles, the people love that sort of thing.
Any opportunity to get close to the cast is going to really draw that connection between your audience and your performers.
Absolutely. Since Frank was... Oh, I remember. I was in the middle of a number earlier. I was in the middle of a song. He begins again, but a deltoid and a bicep, a hot groin and a tricep. And he's just describing a top-heavy guy.
Yeah.
Like, he's not saying, I like a guy with nice calves.
Don't skip leg day, guys. Leg day is just important as any other day.
If not more important, because hip flexibility is like the meat and potatoes.
Not only that, but who likes a person with chicken legs?
Frank. He's making eye contact with, like, Annabelle is there, and Gay Brown is there. Sadie. And he's telling them specifically the areas he engineered to be exactly to his taste. He says it makes him shake. Makes me want to take Charles Atlas by the
hand.
He breaks the fourth wall again, giving us a little key in of, like, I'm still talking about Charles Atlas, guys. I want to take him by one of his body parts for sure.
So I feel like this totally backs up our claim that Rocky is Charles Atlas.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's hinting again at, I'm going to take Charles Atlas by the hand.
And he does later. He hooks arms with Rocky, takes him into the bridal suite.
Yeah.
It's such a strange ceremony for us to be witnessing and for Transylvanians to be witnessing, but they're all voyeurs, so unsurprising, I guess.
During these last lines, Riff and Magenta have kind of crept up behind Frank, and they're kind of following him. Rocky is off in the distance, flexing again, showing off.
Mm-hmm.
Frank holds out his arms. Magenta and Riff take off his surgical gown
They
for
start
him.
untying all of his little ties around his apron. It's at this point in the commentary, Richard O'Brien reveals it's here he knew Riff doesn't like Frankenfurter very much. Like, Magenta is the domestic in this situation. She's the one that helps him get undressed. And that Frank is somewhat demoting his lab assistant to, like, yeah, and you also help me take off my apron. It's a little demeaning. Poor Richard, he calls Riff, himself, inarticulate and ugly as a character. Like, that's how he feels, which I disagree with.
Yeah,
I don't feel that way.
sweet Patricia Quinn also says, I never thought of you that way.
And he's like, well, I guess that says something about how you, like, see people, basically. And it's like, no. Riff is underappreciated.
Yes.
He's a worker who goes underpaid and underappreciated for too long, and it's a morality story about what happens when workers revolt. Brad is watching Riff and Magenta undo these apron strings, and when he realizes that Frank is getting back into the lingerie, he, like, quickly checks to see if Janet is watching, which she is. And he is, again, just like, he purses his lips, he shakes his head very disapprovingly, like, this man can't keep his clothes on. And he's really distracting my fiancé here. Frank has turned around at this point and is singing directly to Rocky. He says, in just 7 days, oh baby, I can make you a man. Frank starts doing his, like, butt kick, walk, dance thing down the line. He goes, I don't want no dissension, just dynamic tension. Like, you might protest to being my adult male sex toy.
But I don't want to hear it. I just want muscle on muscle.
Just to... that sound. That's all Frank wants to do is rub skin. We could not, though, because we paused this frame, and Anthony Milner is in the background, like, leaning against the pommel horse very casually. And we just, like, it caught us on a good one. We couldn't stop laughing about that. But Janet is getting into the groove. She says she's a muscle fan. But is she, though?
I think that Janet is just horny at this point.
Okay.
I think that she has seen Frank in his lingerie. She has seen Rocky in his little gold booty shorts. She's been serenaded by the sultry Eddie. Mm-hmm. And now she's all wound up. Mm-hmm. So at this point, she's like, you know what? I'm a muscle fan.
Yes. Yeah, because, yes. Everyone is horny at this point. Yeah. You've seen so many people in various stages of undress that, like, if you aren't a muscle fan, you probably are at this point in the movie. But I also am not sure if she's just bought into the advertisement. Yeah. Literally, that Frank is selling to her. Is she now wearing the rose-tinted lenses and is bought in because Frank was
such a good salesman?
Yes, exactly. But also, no one addressed the phone earlier. Like when Brad was like, hey, listen, we've been trying to get to a phone, and it turns instead into Frank making claims about his dominance traits. Yeah. Right. And that's such master manipulation because it just distracted everybody from the real question. Like, at this point, I can't fault Brad because he has asked for help at this point. He's not just ignoring Janet. Yeah. And he's been ignored at this point. No one has even taken the dang saxophone from the guy.
Yeah, Brad is literally still holding the saxophone that was shoved into his arms.
Well, what's he supposed to do with it? Like,
put it on the ground? Put it in the tank? Put it literally anywhere except for in his arms?
No, he's just... But he doesn't... It keeps his arms full, so he can't have his arms around Janet, and he can't really get her to hush up because he looks at her and is just shocked.
Yeah, the funniest part about this scene, this shot to me, is when Brad looks at Janet, he mouths like, no, at her, and it makes me laugh so hard because he is so offended.
She rolls her eyes, she looks down, she's been caught, she forgot that she didn't come here single. And everyone continues singing, in just 7 days, I can make you a man. Dig it if you can. In just 7 days, I can make you a man. And he does his Tim Curry thing. It's just the thing that he does when he's doing the thing. It's just so, masterclass performer. He has so much attitude as Frankenfurter, even though he just murdered a guy. Like, we're watching this and we get re-charmed by him in, I think, 30 seconds flat.
During this last line, Frank makes eye contact with Rocky, gives him this little smirk. Rocky's facial expression does not change, by the way. It's
nope.
Stays 100% the same the entire time. Mm-hmm. Frank grabs his arm, hooks it around his.
And then Riff and Magenta, we cut to just after they've pulled a couple ropes to open the curtain that was behind Frank's podium and microphone earlier, revealing a bridal suite done out in black silk. It's got everything in there. It's got like an
Yeah.
atlas stained glass window, RNF monogrammed pillows on the bed. That's a canopy bed with candelabras on either side. I love an evenly framed shot. I am a stan of them. Can't help it. Because we also have those two statues of David that have nail polish
And
and
lipstick.
lipstick on.
And there's even nail polish on their toes.
Uh-huh. And Columbia is still sitting on Eddie's motorcycle. She's is like her facial expression changes very subtly, and you have to be paying very good attention to notice.
She's a little bit upset still because I mean obviously her boyfriend just got murdered. But she also genuinely cares about Frank and his well-being, so she is happy for Frank because now
This is the experiment they've been working on.
Yeah.
This is what they've all been waiting for. Like, she's happy to see the success.
Well, not only that, but also at this point in this song, it has started to change into the literal bridal march. The bum, bum, ba-dum, bum,
Mendelssohn's
bum, bum.
Bridal March.
Yeah.
Yes. And she starts to just, like, get bummed out again because it's like she realizes, oh, man, the guy I liked, he's not even here anymore. Like, whoa. She starts to, you do see a change in Columbia. Frank and Rocky walk forward. Rocky's kind of hobbling forward between the two lines of guests who are throwing confetti at them and shouting their approval. Rocky, Rocky, rah, rah, rah. Rocky, Rocky, rah, rah, rah. Just as Rocky and Frank enter the bridal chamber, the curtains begin to close, and just before they seal, Frank hops into Rocky's lap, straddling him, and
That's it.
That's it.
That's all of our that's our section for today.
That's our with that gong. The Transylvanians are out of there. Say goodbye to the Transylvanians. They will not be coming back. We will miss you guys. If you were a shadow casting Transylvanian, now is when you get to go sit and watch the rest of the movie and enjoy your time.
Go get a beer from the lobby.
Yeah. We have a couple of really awesome voice memos this week from a couple of our listeners. I was talking about facial expressions earlier, but I'll let Rose talk about it a little more.
Hello, my name is Chloe Rose, and I'm also known as Rose Scribs on Instagram and TikTok. So, what I do on my platforms are mostly just creating Rocky Horror content, whether it's drawings, animations, or cosplay. I've been using Rocky Horror as a creative source for a bit over a year now. I mostly redraw frames from the movie, but even then, I love exploring my style with each drawing that I do. And the thing I love drawing the most, though, are the characters. They're just so special and unique to me, and I try to capture that every time I draw them, especially Frank's and Magenta's facial expressions. They're just so expressive with their face, and I try to capture that and their emotions that they're feeling in that moment. And that doesn't go for like just them. It's literally every single character. Like, they all have their differences. I just love the fact that it brings out creativity in people too, like not just me drawing or cosplaying. Like, it goes for everybody, whether it's like fan art like I do, making costumes, writing stories, making theories on it. It's just so diverse, and it's so cool to have something like that as a creator or just as a person in general. It really brings out confidence in people, which I really admire. It's just such a fun thing to be a part of and to be in.
And then we have a voice memo from Taylor with her unique experience with Rocky Horror.
Hi, my name is Taylor Keller. I am from New Jersey, a little town in New Jersey. I directed Rocky Horror once before in my life. I was a former Columbia, and now I'm working on a theater company that puts on an annual production of Rocky Horror every year around Halloween. My first experience with Rocky Horror was the Glee episode, which I know is super embarrassing, but, I was a freshman in high school and I just wanted to be Rachel Berry. And, I liked being in the know. I liked being relevant with Glee. And so, when they released this idea of this Rocky Horror Glee show, I had absolutely no idea what it was about. I come from a household that doesn't talk about sexuality or, the queer community. My parents are kind of reserved in their viewpoints on that. And so when this Glee episode came out, I remember asking my parents if I could watch it. My mom, knowing nothing about it, said, sure, I don't care, why not? And I just remember the minute Tim Curry takes off his cape, I was like, what is this? And how are they going to do this on Glee? And I was just like, I was so shocked because I never saw a man in drag before. I truly think like Rocky Horror was my first introduction to men and women's clothing and the idea that, gender is this construct. But, I didn't know that at the age of 13. I was just like, this is so bizarre. It wasn't until my senior year of high school, really, there was a production in a town or two over from mine, and it was my boyfriend and I at the time were like, I said, we should just go, it's gonna be fun. I've never seen a shadow cast, so I didn't know what to expect, and this was like the live theater production. People were dressed up, they had props, and oh my god, it was just a night I will never forget. I went back the following year to see it again, and then, as I got into college, there was always just like this thought in the back of my mind, like, I love this show, I need to do the show. In a weird way, Rocky Horror is home to people. I think people can find acceptance in this community where, sure, the movie doesn't make sense, or the music's not like top notch, or, whatever, but it allows your inner conventionalist out. Like you can come as you are, and there's a place for you in Rocky Horror. There's always you know, a home for you.
And we love getting these voice memos because we're getting such good conspiracies and opinions that are helping us inform the research that we're doing and the kind of bigger, I guess, thesis statement that we're trying to answer, If you guys want to send us voice memos, our DMs on Instagram are open.
Yes.
Or you could always email us them at timewarpradiopod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at timewarpradio.
You can also find us on Twitter. That's right. We have finally joined the Twitter realm. We are Time Warp Rad Pod.
Our Facebook is Time Warp Radio Podcast. And our blogspot is timewarpradio.blogspot.com. We'll be posting a bunch of meatloaf. That is where I will post my meatloaf recipe. There we go. I finally know where to put it.
I do have a really good meatloaf recipe that I got from a Disney princess recipe book, so maybe we'll share that one.
Heck yeah. But we will see you guys next time. And don't forget,
on Wednesdays we watch Rocky. Bye.
Bye.
Please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. It really helps us out, and we appreciate all your feedback. We'll see you next time.